The iMore Show is brought to you today by another awesome podcast called Ventured. It's a series produced by iconic venture capital firm Kleiner Perkins, who has invested in Google, Amazon, Twitter, Uber. The Ventured podcast takes a close look at some of the fastest growing trends in technology in Silicon Valley, as well as behind the scenes interviews with tech giants from companies like Netflix and Google. You can find the show by searching Ventured on iTunes or SoundCloud. Thanks, Ventured. It is December 10, 2015. I'm Rene Ritchie, and right now we're going to start our massive year in review. This is the iMore Show. Joining me this week, I think it is Serenity Caldwell, but in Clark Kent tradition, in Lara Danvers tradition, she's wearing glasses, so I'm not sure.
Yes, I'm Serenity Caldwell.
Mild-mannered blogger.
Oh yes.
And then they come off in your roller derby girl.
I'm wearing my glasses today. I'm still recovering from my epic cold this week. So everything hurts.
Winter is such a jerk.
It is. You know what? I'm going down to Florida later today to play some roller derby and to chill. So I'm hoping that'll be like a good.
Might there be some Disney in your future?
No Disney. We had the Disney. We had the Disney experience.
Okay.
We might go back next year.
Okay. Well, I just assume Florida exists mostly as a container for Disney.
You know, a bunch of my friends who are going down as part of our team all went to Wizarding World of Harry Potter today, and they're all just posting pictures of Diagon Alley and Hogwarts Expresses, and I'm not jealous at all. Definitely not.
They are awesome human beings, and we're not jealous of them.
No.
So we wanted to do a year in review, but it turned out the year was so big. There was so much stuff that we're splitting it into.
Yep. If we tried to do an entire year, this podcast would be 5 hours long.
If we did even the last 3 months, I think it would be 5 hours.
I have so much to talk about, so we probably should just start. Let's start talking.
Yeah, I suggested we start with CES, and then we both thought back and realized nothing much happened.
Yeah, the only thing that happened at CES is, let's see, I was again delirious with a cold. That was actually the worst cold I've had all year.
You made a brilliant song.
Yes, and I wrote a song about CES while on cold meds, and it was special. And then Rene sung it for the next 6 months to try and torture me anytime that we were in the same room.
It was so catchy. But yeah, like there's no Macworld anymore, and Apple still doesn't do anything at CES. So while the rest of the industry is getting their ducks in order, Apple's kind of like, you'll have some HomeKit vendors there. There'll be some CarPlay stuff there, but really, yeah, not much.
Yeah.
So the big news for us, I guess it started at the March event, which Apple hadn't held in a while. They hadn't done a spring event since the iPad 3, I want to say, like 2012.
Mm-hmm. That sounds about right.
And for years, it was, where's Apple? Apple's not releasing any products for the first 6 months. Apple's waiting until June for their first event. Doomed, so doomed. But it was almost like an extended vacation.
Yeah, you know what? I actually kind of like having the first 4 months off. Not off, but it's a great way to play catch up because Apple's fall is so jam packed. But this spring, Apple decided that all right, you guys want a bunch of products. You guys are saying we're not innovating fast enough. Our asses. All right, here, have an Apple Watch.
Yeah, so we had seen the Apple Watch at the September event alongside the iPhone, but it was more of a tease. It was like let's get you started, and this was the real Apple Watch event.
Mm-hmm. This is when it all went down, and I remember you and I beforehand. I'm like, Are we gonna get Apple Watches to play with? And the answer was no. But we gotta play. We gotta play with demos for a while. And I believe was that Federico Vitici's first overseas adventure.
It might have been, yeah. I think it was.
I'm pretty sure that was the first time Rene and I met Mac Story's Federico Vitici in the flesh.
It was also the first event we covered together because Apple didn't do a major October event. It was a very tiny one. Yeah,
that's true. And it was the first. Yeah, it was the first event that we were able to sit in the same room for, and
so much better to not have to do it alone. Team. So much better.
Very, very true. It was very funny because it was, a bunch of my old colleagues from Macworld. I was sitting next to Jason Snell, and then Dan Frakes, who now works at the Wirecutter, was I think on our other side, and then we were in the middle. And Susie Ox, who still works for Macworld, was there.
Yeah, and on the other side was John Gruber, and I forget the gentleman's name from Hodaki, which was a really interesting perspective.
Yeah, it was a fun-filled press section while we watched them talk about the Apple Watch and what was going on with that. In general, that was an interesting event.
Yeah, so the Apple Watch stuff itself, well, first Serenity tried on I think every Apple Watch edition, I think all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
We made a beeline for the edition table.
Yep, I had a 38 on one wrist and a 42 on the other, and I found out later they weren't actually supposed to let me do that. Oh well, I had what, $34,000 worth of, which is something absurd, more money than I will ever have on my wrists again, and I'm kind of okay with that. But you know what? Yeah, we got to try on a bunch of different Apple Watches. I asked a bunch of annoying questions about the tables because as a former retail geek, I was like, "Ooh, tables that slide in and out, how pretty!" We checked out some of the new bands. It was a good time. A lot of really interesting stuff, and of course, the Apple Watch wasn't even really the big news of that event.
Well, that's absolutely true. But the one thing that was sort of, there had been so much speculation about pricing. That was the one thing, because Apple had not announced pricing in September, and everyone was putting up their estimates. And I remember early, John Gruber and a couple people said it's going to be $10,000. People, no, you're out of your mind. There is absolutely no way. And then they came out and they said the Sport is selling for $350 to $400. The watch is selling for $500 to about $1,000. And the Apple Watch edition, not even a 99, $10,000 and up, and not available in stores. Yeah, special stores. Yeah. It was Apple's first foray into this really, and it caught, I mean, some people called it embarrassing. Some people called it outlandish. Other people are like, I'd pay that much to fly to my fancy Singapore Airlines cabin to Japan and for my 5-star hotel room. So give me 3 of those for my dog, please.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny to me when I had almost forgotten about that pricing debate entirely, because it vanished as soon as the watch actually went on sale. There was a big hubbub about, oh, Apple's gypping the little guy and how dare they do this and how dare they do that. And then once the watches became available, no one really talks about the edition in our circles and in just the general tech community, because the edition isn't really meant for us. And I know that there are some celebs that are wearing the edition. I know some people who go out of their way to buy the edition. But in general, you know, the edition and any press surrounding it has kind of died off. And of course, in the fall, we got, you know, updates to Apple Watches that gave us a faux gold for the people who wanted the gold look, but not necessarily the
casual gold. Absolutely. Yeah, and it was interesting because there's been a lot of angst about Apple and Johnny Ive specifically this year, and this sort of encapsulated it. It was one of those things where it was un-Apple-like, and I've always been of the opinion that because if Apple doesn't do weird things, then they're boring. If they do weird things, then they've lost their path and they're no longer Apple. And I like this experimentation, even if it's an abysmal failure. I like to know that they've tried it and they're not doing it for a real reason.
I'm sure they covered their bottom line, and I think that's probably what they care about in that regard. And Johnny probably just wanted the ability to make a gold watch because it's a watch. Oh well. No, you know what? It's interesting to me if we reflect back on take the Apple Watch as our first category, right? Of products that Apple released this year. So I'm still wearing my watch. You still wearing your watch?
Yep, right here.
Yeah. So I wear my watch pretty much daily. My watch right now works for a couple of key purposes. I use it for notifications when I'm walking around the house or out and about and I don't want to pull out my phone. And for that, it is hugely important. While driving is really nice because I can see something and respond to it all with my voice without having to worry about, even risking the idea of having to pull out my phone or going over the side of the road to read a text message. I can just be like, okay, someone messaged me, Rene messaged me. Okay, it's not about the site burning down. It's about Supergirl. I can answer this when I'm off the road, or I don't have to pull off the road to send a text. That's really nice. I really like turn-by-turn directions for walking and biking. Yeah. Although I've run into a couple of really awful bugs where it's, which is mostly a GPS problem, where the GPS just isn't fast enough to catch up with the watch. Mm-hmm. It's like, wait, you were supposed to turn half a block ago. I'm sorry. But overall, that is a pretty nifty feature. The health tracking is my primary use for it right now. Health tracking is incredibly useful for me when I play Derby, because it allows me to know, approximately my caloric burn and how much food I need to eat afterwards, so that I don't feel like 1,000 knives stabbed me in the morning. But it's also, as a journalist, as somebody who works at home, and kids can very easily get stuck in front of a computer going type, 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 type. The stand notifications are really helpful, as well as some of the timers that I've set up for myself, where it's like by 1 p.m., if I haven't eaten food yet, my watch will beep at me and just be like, yo, you need to move, because otherwise next thing you look, it's gonna be 4 p.m. and you haven't eaten anything and you're gonna be cranky and you're gonna
your fiance will come home and just find you mossed over, frozen on top of a computer.
There have definitely been times where I've texted Rick and been like, if you bring me a Boloco smoothie, I will love you even more than I love you right now.
For me, it's the same thing. And when I especially noticed it is now traveling. Like I just set up a bunch of a specific watch face I have set for traveling. It has all the different, like the time where I'm going, the time where I am, has a timer for the flight. It has all these things set up. It has my boarding pass on it. It has TripIt notifications on it. It has Uber on. Like it just makes it so convenient to travel that I just don't even like the idea of not traveling with it. I even used it to pay for the Starbucks on getting onto the plane. It's amazing for all that stuff.
Yeah, that's my final big usage for it, is having it for Apple Pay and having it for traveling. Yeah. I'm going to be staying in a hotel this weekend that uses your watch to unlock the doors, and I'm really excited about that. But when I was at Disney World, I really that was the thing that really keyed me into the watches. Like the watch isn't there yet in terms of payment, because only some places take it, and like Starbucks still doesn't have tap to pay; it just has scan to pay. But being at Disney World and never having to pull out a card, and basically, honestly, I carried my health card around and my ID around for drinks, and that was about it. When we were at Epcot, everything else was just watch. I didn't even use them. Like the Magic Band has similar properties, but I didn't even use the Magic Band because the watch was already set up, and I'm like, I don't need to set up a credit card. I've got it set up here. It's cool. And I was essentially able to get around for an entire weekend just using the watch and never pulling out cash and never pulling out a credit card. And it was really awesome. It was a really nice way to enjoy the resort and to enjoy, and as you said, to enjoy traveling. I love not having to pull out a physical boarding pass. It's so nice.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely great. I use it for cooking and all these other things, and we'll get into watchOS 2 later, because that's my second big thing now is remote control. But it is a first gen product. It's absolutely a first gen product. It won't appeal to anybody, but it's added significant value to my life, and that's what I look to Apple to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so if we talk about downsides to the watch this first year, so I'm not really using glances and I'm not really using apps. I really want to use a couple of specific apps. Like I would really love a fast native version of Authy which is an authenticator application, because that makes perfect sense to me on my wrist. If I'm doing two-factor authentication and my phone was like, please enter this code, it would be really nice to pull it up on my watch and just be like, okay, I can do that. Or ETA is another example of something that I use as a complication as part of Watch 2.0, but not necessarily an app. I don't find myself using apps at all.
I don't use any apps. The only glance, I use a couple glances, like specifically when I'm at a drive-through and I want to order my Starbucks, I will push up the glance to pause the music that's playing because I don't want to reach for my phone. But that's about it.
That's a glance. I really need to, I use the heartbeats glance, and I use, oh yeah, big thing. I swear to God, I would buy this just for the Find iPhone button.
Oh yeah, so great. I want Find Everything buttons.
Yeah, seriously.
Find Apple Pencil, please.
Oh God, yeah, that one needs a trigger. But seriously, that is a huge part of my workflow, where I'll just be walking around and before I leave the house being like, I have no idea where my phone is. And rather than tear my hair out and run around, I just press a button and I'm like, oh, there's the ping. Okay, I left it in the laundry, or I left it under a shelf.
Or it's sitting there right in front of you. You just didn't see
exactly.
it.
Or it's in my back pocket and I just didn't notice it. But yeah, I'll occasionally use glances, but I forget that the music app can do that.
Yeah, my guess is that we're going to need to reevaluate, like both Apple and developers and customers, what an app means on a watch. And it might not mean the same thing it means on a phone or a tablet or even a TV.
Can I be honest? I really like the carousel is a neat idea and all the little tiny app bubbles. I want them to go back to an iPod Nano style thing. I want I would actually prefer pages of apps, because as cool as the bubbles is and the scroll is, it's never accurate for me. I never tap the right thing. And I'm always either tapping the wrong app or I just can't find the apps that I want. Like I need a favorites screen of just like the 5 apps that I actually use. Like I'll use Yelp. Yelp's actually pretty good. Yelp, Uber, ETA, Authy, and the Maps app. Those are like the only apps that I really use. But I have all of these apps here. Like I have all of these apps and I have Zoom on. So everything's crazy, but I have all of these apps.
Wow.
I have way too many apps, and
you have almost a complete DNA sequence of apps.
I have. Well, it's like I'm looking at this. Like a Starbucks, Flight Track, Home, Calling, Messages, Streaks, Just Press Record. Actually, Just Press Record is pretty cool. Like I have a ton of apps here that I never remember to use because it's always such a pain to use. And I know that you can say to your watch like open Streaks or open Press Record, and that will work. But I never think about it. It's
the thing for me is that
not in my workflow.
Yeah, but see, I don't know if I miss them. I think that might just be it, is that they're not that valuable to me on my wrist. And the things that are the things that are the notifications and the built-in stuff, like you said, the directions and the timers and all those things. And I just don't know what's compelling yet. Even Uber, I don't know. See, Uber is great though, because I don't know when it's a notification, when it's a glance, and when I'm in the app. It kind of just shows me my thing is arriving and then shows me where it is. And that I think is the best experience, that I shouldn't have to worry about what's an app anymore. It should just be a continuum, like one logical experience on my wrist that makes sense at that size.
Absolutely. And my major problem with Uber right now, and just this is my problem with the watch in general, is that I don't trust it yet. I don't trust that the geolocation is correct to just press request Uber, especially if I'm in a city, because chances are it's probably 3 or 4 blocks off right now.
I request on my phone and then I just use my watch for updates.
Yeah, see, that makes more sense to me. But it's still, I understand where they want to go with this. And I think there's a lot of potential here, but there are definitely like the watch is not perfect. The side button for friends, I don't send sketches anymore, which is a bummer because I thought, well, it's like I've been trying to get my fiance to wear an Apple Watch because I have like 3 of them lying around right now. And I'm like, just wear one of my test units because it would be really fun to like send silly drawings. And I know you're just going to send peens like half of the time, but it's still like, it would be fun. And he's just like, I just have no use for it. And then I forget that it's there and then it runs out of battery. And I'm like, yeah, I know.
Yeah. Early adoption phase.
Yeah, it's hard to sell to the general population. I think they really do for watchOS 3 and the next version of Apple Watch. I think they need to really take a sort of step back and reevaluation of like what people are using these for and how apps need to work, and maybe a reinvention of the carousel being like, this was a good idea in theory, but like it might work better on the 42 millimeter, but on the 38 millimeter, it's so tiny. And
I'm hoping if they get significant, because Siri is getting better and better and the hardware will get better and better. And I think I'd be okay with voice as the primary interface for this if it was spot on.
Me too. Yeah, exactly. Right now, Siri still has too much of a delay for me. Offline Siri is the big thing, I think, for me in the watch, in that the second that if my iPhone is even a little bit, if it's too far away, or if it's the wireless connection is not perfect, then Siri goes from a perfect implementation on the device to a piss a horrible, or to the point where I'm like, oh, it's not working, so I'm just not going to use it. Which is unfortunate. Like that's part of this problem where it's like it's almost there, but because it's not, I don't get into a habit or a routine of using it. And if I don't get into a routine, then I just don't use it.
Yeah, I mean, like digital things will try and try again until something works. Biological things will either understand it does work, it doesn't work, but if it sometimes works, we go insane.
Yeah.
That's just how biological things work. We'll take a quick break so I can tell you about lynda.com, the online learning platform with over 3,000 on-demand video courses to help you strengthen your business, technology, and creative skills. For a free 10-day trial, visit lynda.com/iMore. Lynda.com is for problem solvers, for the curious, for people who want to make things happen. Maybe you want to master Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, learn negotiation tactics, build a website, learn how to use Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, all of that. Just go to lynda.com and feed your curious mind. Lynda.com has amazing courses, and they're adding more and more courses every time. Apple just open sourced Swift. If you want to get involved in the Swift programming language, there has never been a better time. There's never been a better place than Lynda.com. I've been using Lynda for a couple of years now just to brush up on photography, on audio editing, on a whole bunch of stuff. And I just saw Leo Laporte was actually showing off Burt Monroy doing some awesome Photoshop stuff that I want to go and see how he did, making virtual billboards. I want to find all that out, and I can find out about it on lynda.com. So watch and learn from top experts who are passionate about teaching. Stream thousands of video courses on demand. Learn at your own schedule. Learn at your own pace. Courses are structured so you can watch them from start to finish or consume them in bite-sized pieces. It's just fabulous. You can put them on iOS, on Android. I cannot say enough good things about this. So for your lynda.com membership, it'll give you unlimited access to training on hundreds of topics, all for one flat rate. Whether you're looking to become an industry expert, you're passionate about a hobby, or you just want to learn something new, I want you to visit lynda.com/iMore. You'll get a free 10-day trial. That's LY. You were saying earlier, the other part of this event, because it wasn't as if the watch was enough, saw the introduction of something that in many ways is just as exciting. It's harder to put on your wrist, but it was the brand new MacBook. And it had... tiny, controversial keyboard, but really nice size.
Yeah, you know what? Until I met the new love of my life,
the iPad Pro.
The iPad Pro. For those of you who couldn't see me holding it up like a prize child, like the Lion King, the MacBook was going to be my next mobile purchase. I was really dead set on the fact that I was going to get one of these because to me it looked like the perfect machine for writing and working on the go. Where it's like, it wasn't super powerful, but as a laptop, I don't really need anything with super mega horsepower. I need something that's going to be able to run my writing apps and that I can probably run iMovie on to do some quick edits before I throw it over to my desktop. Like I have a desktop for a reason. And that major reason is, doing heavy duty editing work on. But my laptop doesn't need to be that. My laptop needs to be thin and light and comfortable and easy to use on an airplane. Which is why I've been on the MacBook Air line since 2010. I've had an 11-inch Air since 2010. And that screen is beautiful. That trackpad is wacky. Rene, you've been using a MacBook pretty much since then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I still had to go. I still do go back now that I have the iMac. So I bought the 5K iMac later, and actually I had the 5K iMac first because that was early. That was last year already. But I use that for Final Cut Pro and for all the big heavy horsepower stuff. But the new MacBook, I fell in love with it almost immediately for a couple of reasons. One is like it definitely does have its drawbacks. Like there's a horrible webcam in it because the lid is just too thin to fit the Z index of a proper web camera. So it does have compromises like everything, but it's so easy to travel with, and it is so small. It took me about, I don't know, I think it took you about an hour. It took me about like 2 hours, 3 hours to get used to the keyboard. After that, I haven't thought about it again.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not. I want full-sized keys. That's my big thing. Full-sized keys and backlighting are my sort of big hot button issues. No pun intended. And the MacBook is weird. I was definitely typing too hard on it first, but the more that I typed on it, the more I got used to it and was like, okay, no, I can really enjoy this. And this is something that really feels natural and comfortable for me. And I think most people who have serious problems with it they're used to heavier key travel. The bigger key travel and a deeper push is awesome. But when you're going for a laptop that's super thin and light is, not going to really have all that space for keys, you got to think about compromises.
And human brains, at least to me, like I've never liked just one thing. I don't have a favorite movie, a favorite TV show. I like variety. And for me, I'll just get used to something and my brain will adapt and think that's normal. And then when I go back to something else, I'm like, oh, this is odd. This is confusing. And then half an hour later, that'll be normal. And the next thing will be confusing again. So that's never been a problem. And that was the same with the Force Touch trackpad. Again, it's got huge advantages when all of that stuff becomes digital. And if you're haven't kept up on the Force Touch stuff, Apple announced it with the original Apple Watch back in September of 2014, but it actually shipped on the MacBook first. And the implementation is very different. They're using the same name, but this is 4 little sensors. And when you push down on it, it basically vibrates horizontally, but because of proprioception, your fingers don't know that. And it feels like a click. And like you press more, it feels like a deeper click. And you press more, it feels like it seriously,
magic.
It makes you think physics is a lie. I mean, it's
very, very cool.
But I love it, and like again, it feels it feels better than a trackpad to me because I can push anywhere. It's not a hinged surface where when Apple first made that change, you had to press you get a clunky click. You had to press the bottom of the trackpad, and with this, you can press anywhere, and they don't need a mechanism underneath it. There's no physical mechanics there, so it can still be thin. And I was walking around. South Bay with the MacBook in the inside pocket of my Scotty vest. I didn't even have to have a bag with me. It was like a tablet. It was the closest thing before the iPad Pro became the closest iPad to a MacBook. This was the closest MacBook to an iPad.
Yeah, and I do think they fit in different niches. It's interesting, right? Because I like having used the iPad Pro now for 3 weeks as my sole laptop computer. There are things where I think, a MacBook might be a better workflow for me. But overall, the things that attract me to the iPad Pro are very different than I think what would attract people to the MacBook as a tablet. So you've been using it for what, 6 months?
Yeah, since the event. Since right after the event, yeah.
What are the things you really, really like about it as a travel computer, and what are the things that you want fixed?
So the part of this is just because I'm so used to OS 10. OS 10 is muscle memory for me that there's a lot of things that I could easily be doing on the iPad Pro, and recently I have been doing, but I just know how to do them. I don't have to think about them on the MacBook. And the small size is great because your airlines are becoming increasingly jerky about how much space they give you. And I had a 13-inch MacBook Pro, and I could barely open it on Delta Airlines, I think, last time I flew Delta, which is horrible. And this, I can open it up. I put it on my lap, and Air Canada economy. It works fantastically well. It is so light. It is carry. The battery life is really, really good. And it is just a sleek, tiny little travel computer. I could never use the 11-inch MacBook Air because it just didn't have enough pixel height for me. And I wanted to run Photoshop, and I wanted to look at web pages. But this has a Retina display. And I think if it didn't have one, I wouldn't be that interested in it. But because it has a Retina display, it's just, and a Retina display is 2 pixels for every point. But when you're doing things like drawing or video or something, you get all those pixels, and then it just becomes a really, really high density display. And it's again, not the perfect Mac. Broadwell Y is not a powerful processor, so there's things on it that make it chug. But for everyday travel use, until the iPad Pro, it was just phenomenal.
Yeah, I think the Retina display was for me the big ticket. And it's funny, one of the things that I've noticed going back from the Pro to my 11-inch, I actually don't want to use my poor laptop anymore because staring at that screen for more than 3 seconds makes my eyes bleed.
Those chunky pixels, they scratch your retinas, Ren.
Yeah, not literally, but still, it's really difficult for me to go back to the 11-inch screen after staring at this beauty. And I imagine this is true for the MacBook.
Yeah, the first time I got a Retina, I think it was on the Retina 15-inch MacBook Pro. The first time you got it and you turned it on, it was like someone opened up a screen door and there was just glass. And before, everything had been cut up into these little squares because of the screen. And suddenly that was gone, and you could see the real world, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, it's like wearing glasses. It's something really, really special that allows you to actually see and enjoy the world as it's meant to be seen. I remember the first time I got an iPhone 4 and that Retina display, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do all of my reading on this now, even with its tiny little 4-inch screen, because this is so much better.
Yeah, that is weird. And so on the negatives for both of these things, and I don't know if we can attribute all of it to Force Touch or basically the taptic engine that is inside both the Apple Watch and inside the MacBook. But the Apple Watch was hard to ship. Apple tried to get it out as best as they could in April, but many of the models took weeks to arrive, even if you ordered them the second after pre-orders went live. And the buying process was weird because you couldn't just, there was no lineup. You didn't go there on launch day, line up and get your Apple Watch. They had this whole try-on process. And I think all of that was to mitigate how hard it was to ship this. And there have been rumors that one of the taptic engine manufacturers didn't come through, or their yield rates weren't high, or there was some problem with it and they had to trash a ton of taptic engines or a ton of watches. They just couldn't get a quantity of all those watches. And likewise, some of the bands, like the Modern Leather band, apparently there was a rumor they had to change leather suppliers, and that caused delays. And things like the steel link bracelet was hard to make. But all in all, it all just came down to it trickled out. Like you'd have to try-ons, you could order them. It took a while to get. It was a launch unlike any other.
Yes, it was very strange. And I think that's part of what sort of contributed to the Apple Watch's sort of sluggish momentum out the gate. There's a very, I don't know, it seemed very different to me. for a number of reasons than your typical Apple launch product.
And
Go ahead.
that's plagued them all year because like the MacBook was a little bit hard to get up, but it was okay. And then even now with the Pencil and the Smart Keyboard, they're just not able to get them in stores. And previously, like logistics was Apple's thing. They owned that. There have been issues with things like Retina displays causing shortages in the past, but this is the first year I can remember where there's been several products that just haven't been able to ship in a timely fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it's overwork, part of it maybe system component restraint. Part of it just may be they tried an experiment that just did not succeed the way that they wanted it to. I mean, Apple is a company run by humans, not robots yet that we know of.
I don't think Tim Cook sleeps.
Yeah, they're going to make mistakes.
So I'm wondering if they're a mistake, because the pessimistic take on this is just that things got screwed up. The optimistic take, and the one I usually take, is that Apple sprints at these deadlines so hard, and they have these ideas for technology, and it's like they do things that they don't have to do. There's things with this technology that they like, manufacturing processes and finishes that are just nuts. I mean, when you look at them, like you could ship without this, but they really want this. They think it's integral to the experience, and some of these things are hard to do, and some of them don't work the first time. Like they had to trash the sapphire displays on the iPhone 6. Just couldn't get them to work. And I think sometimes it's not that they don't work and they have time to think of something else. It's that they're so close to working, but they just don't land at the exact spot they're supposed to.
Yep.
Take a quick break so I can tell you about Canary, a complete home security system in a single device. Since launching earlier this year, people across the world have been using Canary to stop burglaries and other serious incidents. It's got a camera built into it, 1080p with a wide-angle lens, motion detection, night vision. You can watch your home live at anytime from anywhere. Canary's algorithms send you intelligent notifications when something out of the ordinary is happening at your home, so you know when to look. Canary has a 90 decibel siren that's loud enough to scare off intruders. It also pulls in local police and fire department numbers near your home, so if you're traveling, you can quickly get in touch with exactly the right people. Canary automatically arms and disarms when you leave or come home, and you can link up to 4 Canary devices together in one location, so it's easy to protect a home of any size. It's got a home health, so it monitors your home temperature, humidity, and air quality to protect you against the things that you can't see or hear. It's got best-in-class night vision, so you can see just as well in pitch black room as you can during the day. It's got a privacy mode, so if you're doing something like perhaps karaoke or dancing that you don't want on the camera, it just turns off the camera, turns off the mic. It makes sure that nobody can see you when you don't want to be seen. It's got motion-activated recording, so when it detects motion, it starts recording. It doesn't just stream or record an empty room 24/7. It really is home security reinvented for the modern connected age. So here's what I want you to do. Start protecting your home today with Canary for just $199. Go to meetcanary.com and use promo code iMore to get free overnight shipping. That's meetcanary.com, CANARY.com, promo code iMore, IMORE. Thank you, Canary. Smart home security for everyone. All right, so the thing that consumed most of our April, Serenity, was Photos for Mac.
Dear old Photos, you know, one of Apple's rare beta products. We spent so much time writing about Photos and really enjoying Photos and complaining over Photos. This is a product, Apple's always had problems with cloud services. We say this time and time again, and it's been corroborated across the world. Apple's cloud service record is spotty, so I'm really happy that they chose to launch it in beta. Photos for Mac at the end of the year still has some problems, some major disconcerting problems.
So do you use it, first of all? Has it become your default Photos app?
Yeah. I do use it. I use it with a caveat, which is to say I use it, but I have my entire library physically stored on my iMac as well. And I have a copy stored in Dropbox. Because I was a very early adopter on digital photo storage services. I used Loom, which I believe got bought up by Dropbox and turned into Carousel. And Loom was phenomenal. But there was a terrible moment where Loom lost, there's just a sync error, and they lost an entire grouping of photos that I took when I was in Italy. And I was super panicking. And I emailed them and they're like, oh, we can restore from an earlier backup. It's okay. But that was terrifying to me. And Apple's customer service is great, but they're not nearly that forthcoming or available as something like Loom. And I know, like, I've talked to people who have accidentally lost photos or had photos they've deleted reappear, which is really annoying when you're trying to like delete photos of an ex-boyfriend only to have them reappear every single time you launch it on a different device. So the sync, like the merge sync structure is very frustrating. Especially I think for people who use and manage photos on multiple devices. Apple shot for something huge here. You know, they're talking about a cloud-based app that runs on the web, on your Mac, on iOS devices, and everything is supposed to sync and work seamlessly.
And not just runs, they actually, and I think they actually said this out loud, but they meant it to make photos an integral part of the operating systems, plural.
Yes. And it does. You know what? Photos does a lot of things very well. When the sync works, it works flawlessly. It's like we were talking about earlier with Siri and the watch. It's when things don't work that people lose faith in the service very quickly, because if something doesn't work or if something goes crazy, that's when we start to get nervous. That's when everybody starts to throw up their hands and be like, these are my photos we're talking about. You know, my photos tell a story of my life. And I put a lot of stock into the images that I take and the images that I save.
They're your memories. They're the archive of your memories.
Exactly. They're the things that I put down when my brain doesn't have enough space. And for those to potentially be at risk of disappearing, that is a really disconcerting feeling for me. That is something that I get very, very worried about very quickly. And other people feel the same. You know, something screws up with your photos, you never want to worry.
So let's break it into two parts. So first, they launched the actual app Photos for Mac, which replaced iPhoto and Aperture. Both of those got end of life, and it didn't have all the features we wanted at first, especially back in April. I missed right-click open an editor immediately, but I know like there was tagging was missing, geotagging was missing. There was just a lot of stuff that didn't. I think more of it survived than when Apple has burned to the ground and rebuilt other things like the first version of iMovie, but there still wasn't everything.
The first version of iMovie, the first version of the new iWork suite.
Yes,
this is a pretty standard procedure for Apple, where they say, okay, here's what we had. This is super bloated. Let's take it and tear it down to its fundamentals. And then we can add things back in as people request them or as people need them. But overall, it doesn't make sense for us to say, yes, we are going to work like this.
Yeah, that code base has to die.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to try and port everything over and then have it all be half baked and have people complain. No, I always prefer them going simple first, even at the expense of features.
And I actually like the editing. I think especially for people, like if you had a Photoshop background and you were used to pixel editing, you know, you probably never liked any photo editor. But if you were just used to something like iPhoto, bringing over the basic engine and expanding it from iOS, I thought was great, because you could do the magic wand if that was your level of comfort. But if you wanted, you could just slider for color, slider for light, slider for black and white. But then you could press another button and get individual brightness and saturation and all the sliders that you were used to and histograms. So it's sort of like interface depth, where you could go as deep as your comfort level allowed.
Yep. And I really like, they took some of the engine from Aperture and some of it from iOS, and they kind of put together this really, really easy to use slider with a bunch of extra further drop downs, where as you get more experienced or as you feel more comfortable, you can dive further into the program, which I really appreciate. There's still a lot missing. I'm glad that extensions came with OS 10, which we'll talk about later, but there's still a lot missing. There's still a lot they need to do to make it a photo editor and a photo storage system that a lot of people want to use. But the app itself is actually remarkably solid and really, really nice. iCloud Photo Library, on the other hand, iCloud Photo Library for me has worked about 98% of the time. I have not really had I've had deleted pictures reappear occasionally with iCloud Photo Library, but I've really not had a huge problem with it. It syncs pretty well for me. It works pretty well for me.
Mine syncs eventually.
Backups.
Mine syncs eventually. Like I don't like I know with the photo stream, I used to just take a screenshot on my iPhone and it was instantly on my Mac. And here I'll take a screenshot and a couple hours later it'll be there, but I have no idea when the transfer actually happened. I really like the idea though. I love the idea of Nearline. I always have, huge fan, especially in databases. But so the idea of Nearline is whatever you most recently took and most frequently used is kept highly available on local storage. Whatever you took a long time ago and don't look at very often is kept up in the cloud. With this implementation, the idea was fantastic, but iCloud was still kind of expensive, especially when you start getting to the volumes you'd need for photos and videos, and they have reduced it since then. But also, it's that thing where you could decide whether you wanted full photos on your device or you wanted them just in the cloud. And I think at first people just didn't know what to make of it.
Yeah. Well, it's very different than other photo programs. My biggest nitpick right now with iCloud Photo Library is the same thing with Apple Music, where it's very hard for you to specifically say to your device, "I want these photos kept locally." And in the very beginning, there was a talk. We talked to some folks at Apple and some other folks who were like, "Oh yeah, your favorites folder will stay local to your device." And I'm like, "Okay, great." And it turned out later that that wasn't true. The favorites works the same way that your other folders work, which is to say that it saves recently edited photos and it saves photos that you viewed recently and keeps them local to your device. But it's very otherwise it just keeps low res thumbnails. And not that low-res thumbnails are necessarily bad if you're, bored and scrolling through photos while you're sitting on a plane, for instance. They're okay to look at. But I want to be able to long press on an album or long press on a photo and be like, save this photo offline. Because there are certain photos that I just always want access to. And worse, this gets more complicated when you save different formats to iCloud Photo Library. I've got a huge GIF library just because my friends and I like to send GIFs a lot. It's just a fun way to communicate.
Yeah.
So I've saved a bunch of GIFs to iCloud Photo Library with the intention of, I'll save this here and then I'll use it again down the line. And when I pull out GIFs that are from 2011 and 2012 or like have that timestamp on them after they've been sitting in my library for a while, they'll pull back down as JPEGs, which is very frustrating. And you can get the original GIF version, I think, on your computer, but on iOS, for some reason, whenever I try and pull down an older GIF, it always comes back as a JPEG, and that's a bummer. Like that's one of those things where it's like I would really appreciate that if this works properly, Apple, because now I have to have a separate like Dropbox is my GIF repository. I have to save it somewhere else.
Yeah, and part of the thing for me still is that the lack of consistency hurts my ability to like reliably use it. So like we talked about this before, the hearts, like the hearting on Apple Music is different than hearting in Photos, is different than hearting in some of the other, and I just want consistency. I want the heart to mean I like something, and I want like a bookmark icon or something like in Apple News to say that I want to keep this locally. And when I hit that, I want it always locally. If you pop up a warning, if you have to do say I'm running out of storage, I don't think that'll ever happen because I don't want that many things locally. But the ability to understand state and to if you don't understand the state, it's stressful. You can't rely on it. You become anxious about it. And a little button would really just, I'm going to write about this later today, but a little button would really just make sure like I press this and absolutely 100% of the time this is local on every single device.
Mm-hmm.
I think would go a long way to fixing that.
I would appreciate that. I would really appreciate that because right now it's just tearing. Before we move on.
Yes.
Do we have any sponsors today?
I'm going to do the bigger sponsor reads at the end because I forgot to do them already and we're already 50 minutes in. So I'll do the end sponsor, but I think it might even make sense to break off the software stuff to a separate show and do 3 of these instead of 2.
Yeah, I think 3 of these make sense because we're 50 minutes into this and
just on the spring.
Stopping. Yeah, exactly. And WWDC is a bit of an insanity. So why don't we say this is the first section of the year. Rene, what was your favorite thing about that portion of the year?
So the beginning of the year, I love the fact that Apple went back to doing the spring events. As much as I want the time off, I do like the idea of Apple having their products. Like I like the spring, summer, and fall lineups. I just thought that was excellent. My favorite thing, though, is got to be the Apple Watch because it was something new, and new is always exciting. And it wasn't just new in that it was like yet a smaller iPhone, the way the iPad was, presumably a bigger iPhone. It was something novel. Apple rethought the interface layer. They had strap like bands it was something new, like a whole new way of mixing and matching things. The technology, like the whole health initiative stuff around it was very new. And I think when Apple does stuff like that, whether, they never get it perfect, but it's super interesting to see how they tackle it, especially because unlike phones and tablets, there were 10 years of competitors beforehand, sort of giving them all the data they needed to know what the problems were. They were entering a market where they had to start figuring out the problems too. And I don't know how often we've seen that. So both as a customer who just wanted to buy a watch and play with it and someone who covers the industry, I thought it was just endlessly fascinating. How about you?
Yeah. I think the Apple Watch probably wins my pick of the first quarter of the year too. In part, it is a very new and different device, while still maintaining the old characterization of iOS. It takes it to a new place. It's a very ambitious product. It's one that, as we talked about earlier in the show, it's one that's not without its flaws. But I am wearing it every day. I am really enjoying it, and I don't begrudge the people who don't either. I think an Apple watches are a very personal product. And I think that's something that Apple has kind of been discovering, is like with all of the different band releases and with the different colors, it's really about finding the thing that fits best in your lifestyle and on your wrist. And for me, because I live in an Apple ecosystem and there are certain things about this watch that are absolutely perfect for me, this is a big deal. I wouldn't be able to survive without Find iPhone as a button. That's pretty great. And it really actually, like, having the ability to switch all these different bands out has made me a little bit more conscious in what I wear every day, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a fun, you know what, when you work at home, it's an encouragement to get out of pajamas, which I always appreciate. And I've collected so many bands. I have like 7 different sport bands. I've got faux Hermes bands. I've got a real Hermes band from the review unit that we have. I have the new Pad and Quill slim classic band, which is gorgeous.
See, it's come to the point where I like, if Apple comes out with a new Watch 2 in March, I'm not that concerned because I kind of like, new hardware, but please just make it compatible with the bands. The idea of replacing the case to me is way less stressful than replacing the bands. I got such an investment in those now.
Oh yeah. Well, exactly. I've got a couple of bands that weren't exactly cheap and I really like them. I would hate to have to switch out the lugs or do something crazy. I'm kind of hoping that they'll stick that with those lugs even when they make the case thinner.
Yeah, I'm almost certain they will.
Yeah. What I appreciate, I mean, if you look at the build of this case, the lugs are actually pretty small in comparison to the overall case. So they have the ability to probably thin this down about 50% while still keeping the lug design intact. I think it's the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack of the Apple Watch, where it's not going to disappear unless Apple's zapped everything else that it possibly can.
Yeah, and the thing is, like again, I think the whole thin thing is a misnomer. Like, Apple goes to thin because it's a side effect of the other stuff, but the watch is pretty thick. The new Apple TV is much thicker than the old one. 3D Touch made the iPhone thicker. Again, Retina made some of the iPads thicker previously. It over time, they just want to make this stuff lighter and easier to use, and that's why I like the aluminum of the Apple Watch, because it feels almost like you're wearing nothing. Mm-hmm. And I've become like you to depend on it. The other day, I don't usually wake up at night. The other day, I woke up and I wanted to go get something, so I turned to my watch and I said, turn on the lights in the living room, and nothing happened. And I did it again, and I realized I wasn't wearing my watch. And because it was off on the charger because I'd been sleeping.
Of course.
And I had just gotten so used to, especially when we talk about watchOS 2, I just control everything with my watch. And it's not as efficient as pressing switches, but I don't care. It's just cool. So I've gotten used to doing it. And now it's one of those things. It's how I pay for things. It's how I unlock things. It's how I control things.
You just get comfortable with it.
Super happy with it. Yeah. It's like I get to be, and I think we talked about this in the review when we did it initially. It's like, I feel like I get to be part of inventing the future by having it now. I could wait a couple of years and it'll be better, but I don't want to miss these couple of years.
I like having the buggy experience on my wrist, even if it is buggy.
Yeah, because I feel like our feedback contributes towards making it better.
It does. It absolutely does. So yeah, the watch is, looking at it now, 7 months in, the watch is not perfect. I'm looking forward to hopefully there's some very big software improvements. It would be nice if there's a device that's faster.
S2 chip. Sorry, S2 exactly. Computer on a chip.
Yeah, S2 computer. But overall, like, the watch is a pretty cool piece of technology, and I'm really glad that it exists. I'm glad that I own one. And I still recommend it for people who have specific niches that the watch can fill.
Yeah, I mean, some people still use flip phones. They have a Mac and they still use a flip phone. They have no interest in a smartphone, and that's absolutely fine. So yeah, I feel the same way about a watch too. I'm also interested. I still use the MacBook, and I'm interested. The pain point for me on the MacBook isn't the webcam, and it isn't the keyboard. It's that Broadwell Y processor, because it just can't quite do everything I want it to do. So I have to go back to another computer, and maybe Skylake Y will be even. I know people are dreaming about Apple putting ARM chips in their MacBooks, but even Skylake Y, what do they call it? Skylake Core M is going to be, I think, a significant improvement. So I like everything that happened last March, and it's given me makes me excited for what might happen this March.
Yeah, I feel it.
All right. Serenity, if people want to follow you around the internet in a non-creepy way, where can they go?
They can go to Settern, Settern, on Twitter and Instagram, as well as on iMore.com every single day. I'm about to write up some stuff on some HomeKit interestings. I'm finishing up my iPad Pro article. And I'm also around on the Incomparable Radio Theater on the Air. We just wrapped the first half of our first season, and a Christmas special will come soon. www.theincomparable.com.
Theater.
If you want to hear me say funny voices, and Rene too.
Acting. Genius. Thank you.
Genius.
You can find me at Rene Ritchie on Twitter and Instagram. You can find me, you can find all of us at iMore. We are here on YouTube, youtube.com/iMore video, or on iTunes. Just search for the iMore Show. I want to once again thank all of you for joining us. And I believe I have an awesome sponsor to thank as well, although the page just disappeared. Yes. I also want to thank Canary. Canary is a home security system in one awesome package. Start protecting your home with Canary today for just $1.99. Go to meetcanary.com and use promo code iMore to get free overnight shipping. Thank you, Canary. Thank you, Ren. Go forth and dominate all the roller derbies.
Woohoo! Thank you. And I'll see y'all next week.